What's up YouTube, it's your boy Young Philip and I'm back with another video for y'all today. And before we get started with today's video, I'd like for y'all to click the like button down below, give it a thumbs up, and make sure y'all click that subscribe button, but make sure y'all click the bell so y'all can be notified, don't miss any of my videos. Today's video will be doing a top 10 of the worst Family Guy episodes of all time. Either they was just flat out boring, it just had no sense of humor, or it just like made fans want to rage quit and never watch the show ever again. So without further ado, let's begin. Number 10, Sidescreen of Brenda Q. In this episode of Family Guy, it speaks on domestic abuse. It's about Glenn Quagmire dealing with hearing his sister being beat by her abusive boyfriend Jeff. And this episode was the prime example of why we need to keep things like off of the network or don't try to make it at all. They tried an intervention in that episode, that didn't work. And then Quagmire wanted to try his attempt, which was basically kill Jeff, and Joe was the officer. Actually, he is an officer of Quahog, and he could arrest Quagmire for making a statement like that. But changed his mind after seeing Brenda being smacked by Jeff for the very last time. They decided to go on a little hunting trip. And it's quite weird to do it late at night. But Quagmire ends up getting beat halfway near to death. Like, come on, Jeff is bigger and stronger than you. What makes you think you can beat Jeff? Out of all people, you could beat Brian, but you couldn't beat Jeff. Not even Joe. But anyway, Quagmire successfully kills Jeff and then wrote a fake letter to make it seem like Jeff wrote the letter. This episode taught us it was okay to stay in an abusive relationship and kill crazy people, but this episode should have been left elsewhere. Number 9, Brian's a bad father. Time to open up these can of worms. I quite know it's already in the name. Brian's a bad father. He ends up getting a call from his estranged son, Dylan, who's already been turned his life over since season 6 episode, The Former Life of Brian. He calls his father to let him know that he's going to be part of a show on Disney Channel. So Brian's seen this as opportunities to try to use this to try to further his writing career. Everybody should know Brian is not really good with this on Family Guy. As soon as Dylan found out about it, he doesn't want any parts of him. And Brian has to use Stewie to try to get to Dylan. But they end up making up. That's not the worst part of the episode. The worst part is Peter and his friends once again engaging into some type of wacky antics. And this episode taught us to, use people for their own use. And also shoot each other and then we're all best friends again. Where we do that at? Seth MacFarlane, you need a prayer. Number 8, Brian and Stewie. This season 8 episode earns a spot on this list for literally 22 bloody minutes. It's Seth MacFarlane talking to himself. I don't know if y'all know, but he already voiced Peter, but he voices Brian and Stewie. But anyway, they're stuck in the vault, and it's basically a ball episode. They're stuck at one place. And there were some moments in this episode that make you want to grab your puke bucket because it was really, really disgusting and it was cringy as hell. It damn near made you want to scratch your own eyeballs out just from watching those terrible scenes. Ugh. This is one of the reasons why they say this episode is the prime example of worse. But we just getting started. Number 7, Herpe the Love Sore. Words can't describe how horrible this episode was. When Brian and Stewie are watching a movie where an Indian chief swapped blood with someone else, Stewie wants to swap blood with Brian, which they technically did do it afterwards. But after this happens, Stewie ends up catching herpes from Brian. And he decides to get his revenge on Brian for this little thing. Stewie ain't the only one that caught herpes from Brian. Chris did too. So they decided to sabotage Brian's dates. And then not only that, hack into his Facebook account. But he manages to apologize to Stewie, and then Stewie once again forgives Brian for this. And Stewie gonna have to deal with having herpes for the rest of his natural born life. But at the same time, if I was Stewie, I would get rid of Brian as a friend and find someone new. Number 6, Stewie is insane. Time to talk about another episode that was cringy. In this episode of Family Guy is the big prime example of cringy. When Stewie feels like he's being ignored by Brian, he puts some of Brian's hair as DNA into some scientific nonsense and decides to impregnate himself. I know y'all at home thinking, for real? I'm dead serious. Go watch the episode. It's in season 13. But as soon as they have the babies, it looks like, like I don't even want to describe how they look anymore. Just even thinking about it. But Stewie did take being obsessed to a whole new level. Like, this is one of the episodes that make you want to just turn the TV off at this point. Like, it was just disgusting watching that one. And I'm pretty sure why fans were outraged by this one. After some of the talk of no longer wanting to take care of them, they decided to leave him at an animal shelter. And we somewhat wish to remove this episode out of our heads. Number 5, Brian Griffin's House of Pain. Reasons behind this episode being the worst. Meg and Chris knocked Stewie down the stairs and he was unconscious until the show was over. /episode. But it's also show how irresponsible Meg and Chris are. They try to cover up for weeks until Peter knows about it, but does absolutely nothing until he decides to throw Stewie underneath the family car tire and Lois runs over him and then have Lois take the blame for it. Not just that's the worst part. The worst part was Brian having his show for CBS and they basically made him a sellout. By adding James Woods onto his show, they basically did this intentionally just to fuck with Brian. Like, this takes the cake of being a disappointing episode of Family Guy. Number 4, fresh hair. From babies getting pregnant and catching a horrible disease to fathers marrying their own kids. After Carter hurt his leg at the mall, Chris takes care of him. And Carter lets his family know that he will leave everything in his will to Chris. Besides the jokes being completely uncomfortable and, incest, we have Peter trying to marry his own son just for Carter's money that he's going to give to Chris. Here's 1 cup of terrible incest jokes mixed with weirdness / whack motivations. Then kaboom! A disaster episode of Family Guy. Need I say more? Number 3, Seahorse Seashell Party. Another bottle episode, but this time it's in the Griffin household. Alongside of being one of the second episodes to have a hurricane alongside of American Dad and the Cleveland Show. In this one, Meg basically becomes a punching bag again. But this time, she manages to defend herself against the entire family except Brian and Stewie. Because they don't have nothing to do with this one. Like, what makes me hate this episode is how Meg managed to take this all back by apologizing to them at the end. Like, if I was Meg, I would not be sorry for all the things that I was said. Because they put Meg through a whole lot of abuse throughout the years ever since the show aired back in 1999. Like, no, like, you do not go back on your word. Like, no. Like, this episode basically taught us, like, stay in the house where abuse takes place. And this is something to not joke about. Number 2, April and Quahog. There's only one thing that was good, and that was basically Peter playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on the Xbox 360. The worst part about the show being worse, or better yet, just the episode, not the show, but the episode. Of course, it's Peter admitting that he does not like his kids. Like, he admits that he hates being around the kids. And they basically want no part of him. Even though he is abusive not only to his wife and kids, but to those who are around him. He tried his best to get back on good terms with his kids, but all his attempts failed horribly. But he manages to get back on their good side by buying them an Xbox 360. And they brought back one of the most songs they played back in season 7. Surfing Bird! That's like the other good part about the episode. But everything else except the Surfing Bird and the Modern Warfare 2, those two were good, but everything else, terrible. Before we get into the top one of the worst episode of all time, here are a few dishonorable mentions. Vestigial Peter, Quagmire's dad, Not All Dogs Go to Heaven, and Long John Peter. Coming in at number 1, Life of Brian. The universally hated / worst episode of Family Guy that scored really low on IMDb. This episode is despised not only by me, but fans of the show as well. After Brian was ran over by the car, he is replaced by a fake New York accent having ass dog named Vinny. Like, this the dude y'all choose to... This the dog y'all chose? Like, seriously? But, fans were really outraged by this. And he managed to get kicked to the curb after the episode of Christmas Guy. Thank God they brought Brian back for good, because we wasn't going to be stuck with a dog that's not even from New York. Sound like a fake ass Italian mafia. No disrespect. But he sounded like a fake ass member of the mafia. But this episode just gotta be hands down the absolute worst of all time. I'd like to say thank y'all for tuning in today's video. Make sure y'all click the like button down below. Give it a thumbs up. Make sure y'all leave a comment down below. Make sure y'all click the subscribe button. But make sure y'all click the bell so y'all can be notified. And don't miss any of my videos. Don't forget to add me on my social media at youngphilip_00. That's my Instagram. Don't forget to add me on my Snapchat at Ryan36105. Don't forget to add me on my TikTok at youngphilip00. And with that being said, I'm out.